A prominent feature is, of course, the stained glass windows. And I've got just a couple of examples here. The stained glass windows, of course, memorialized members. Ruth Webster, in particular, that treasurer that helped the organization sock all that money away for all those years. But it also references authors, and of course, being a library, what is more appropriate than that. And these windows are just absolutely wonderful. Another area that was a little bit more private, that could be closed off, of course, was the boardroom. And the library, of course, would be a very public space. Members could come in, they could check out books on the appointed days and times. And they had actually, they had fairly regular hours of service. The boardroom, of course, would have been where the board members would have met. Of course, if you went into the vestibule and you went upstairs, you would encounter the auditorium. And the auditorium, again, was another, very, I would call it public place. And in fact, if you look at city directories listing buildings from the 1870s, 80s, and 90s, there's a category sometimes called public buildings and halls. And generally, the Ladies Library Association is listed there. And the auditorium is used for public events today. There have been performances in the auditorium, there have been speakers, community programs, and it was used that way, of course, shortly after it was built, and would have been, one of the best auditoriums in the community. Another view of the exterior of the building. I have always been of the opinion that, and if you look at photographs of the building, there's this wooden fence structure that continues on to the corner. And of course, today, the corner structure is the Civic Auditorium. But at the time when this house was constructed, it was the home of Judge Hezekiah Wells. And I've often thought that this was a way that they tried to, maybe integrate themselves also into the residential community as well. And I'll show a comparison. There's that little tree in the front of the building, and then the tree gets a little larger. And it was a very much photographed building. There are stereopticon cards, there are postcards. The one thing that the women needed to do in order to build this building, they actually needed to get the necessary legislative approval to own the property. Michigan actually had moderately advanced women's property laws dating to the 1860s, but for an organization to own property, they had to get legislative approval. And this is actually tucked in one of the minute books. The women secured approval to earn property worth less than $30,000. And that shows the stamp from the state of Michigan. The one thing I'll say, and I mentioned this to Beth, that I hoped I wasn't stepping on, I wasn't stepping on any toes here. The obvious question is, what happened to the rooms that the Ladies Library Association vacated in Corporation Hall? The public library got them. And as I said, I think it's very interesting. It would be until 1890 before the public library would have a building of equal significance and grandeur to the Ladies Library Association. And this is a view of the public library. But for about 12 years, the public library would struggle with some of the same building and space issues that the Ladies Library Association had struggled with. And finally, through a very generous gift of Dr. and Mrs. Van Dusen, a library building would be constructed. The other thing I will say about the organization, once the public library really had the rooms and the space, by the early 1880s, there was a significant drop in the membership of the Ladies Library Association. which suggests to me, I mean, it dropped from something like 300 to about 60 members. And it suggests to me that a good number of those individuals were using the library for the circulating library privileges. Now, of course, the association would grow by the 1880s. There would be some changes in organizational structure, and it would once again reach numbers of 200 to 300, which it has those healthy numbers today, I might add. The one thing I will say about the building is it has changed over time. And in 1931, there was a kitchen addition. And as I said, the organization did change over time. Some of the social aspects of the club became more important with teas and luncheons, and a proposal to add a kitchen originated in 1920. And Kalamazoo and the rest of the nation by the late 20s, early 30s, after 1929, would be in the midst of a major national depression when the association realized its goal of constructing the building addition. Through rental proceeds, food sales, the organization raised the $5,000 needed to begin construction in 1931. And again, that would be the equivalent of probably about $71,000 today. Service clubs and the Daughters of the American Revolution rented space for meetings and activities. Food sales raised funds. This addition resulted in a full kitchen, and the organization also had enough funds to install a new oil furnace. This is a state of Michigan historical marker, but in 1975, the building underwent some restoration after Richard Frank, an Ann Arbor architect, developed plans to restore the building closer to its 1870s appearance. And in 1976, the building was recognized by the National Register of Historic Places, the first building in Kalamazoo to gain that recognition. More recent changes have included Memorial Garden, the Virginia Earl Memorial Garden in 2002, and memorial windows. And this is not a good view of the memorial windows, but if you walk by the building, you will see these windows. And if you have an opportunity to be inside the building, you know, they are equally magnificent. One thing that that article or that announcement in the Chicago Tribune said when the building was constructed was just what a great job Kalamazoo had done, and Kalamazoo should be an inspiration to other ladies' library associations and organizations. And indeed, the Kalamazoo organization would provide a model for other ladies' library associations. And I just thought I'd go through a few that some are very, very direct relationships to the Kalamazoo group, and even those that I didn't find an immediate connection, I think certainly they were aware of what the Kalamazoo organization had accomplished. Maybe we'll do, does anybody recognize this building? This is in Allegan County, little town of Wayland. And this is the Hennica Ladies Library Association, an original view to the left and a contemporary view to the right. And that was built, I think that was built about 1910, so that's a little bit later. This one is in Kalamazoo County, though. It's a little dark, but Schoolcraft. And this one still has an active Ladies Library Association that I'm aware of. Moving back to Allegan County, we have a sketch of what it looked like when it was constructed, and then we have a contemporary view. If you've been to Otsego, this is the little club that's now behind the Mi Ranchito restaurant in downtown Otsego. There's no longer an active library association at Otsego. They actually, this building would be used for years by the public library, and then now the public library has since built a newer building in the 1970s.